Hey everyone, I'm John Larson, and I'm an alcoholic.
Hey John.
By the grace of God, good sponsorship, and the fellowship of Alcoholics Anonymous, I've not found it necessary to take a drink since December 4th of 1989, and for that I'm grateful. My home group is the SOS group that meets in Fayetteville on Friday nights at 7:30. You're hereby invited to come check us out. Our last Friday's a speaker. It's a good group of people there. I have a sponsor who's even here. I talk to my sponsor on a pretty regular basis, and my advice is if you don't like talking to your sponsor, you might want to get a different one. But we've developed a good friendship. Then I have a couple sponsees that help keep me sober. I have 3 in good standing, and one's even here tonight, so that makes me feel pretty good. I got another handful of guys that they know they can call me if they need anything. I was taught pretty early on that success in this program, we needed 3 things: that's a sobriety date, a home group, and a sponsor. So, so that's worked out for me pretty good. I've been asked to share my story, and the title page of the big book, it says, "The story of how many thousands of men and women have recovered from alcoholism." I know that recovered word likes to scare a lot of people. I am a recovered alcoholic by taking the steps outlined in this book. I've recovered. And what I've been taught is to kind of compare it to like being shot, all right? So if I get shot and I live, all right, which is a 50-50 chance probably that, but if I survive being shot, I'm going to say, help, I've been shot, reach out for help, and then I'm going to probably go to a hospital or somewhere, and they're going to remove the bullet, they're going to clean it up, they're going to, then I'm going to have, so they're going to treat the wound. Then I'm going to have a period of some type of recovery where I got to be easy on it. Probably going to have a little bit of physical therapy. But if I do as instructed, eventually I'm going to be healed from that gunshot wound. I'll be recovered from that gunshot wound. But I still won't be bulletproof. So that's what it means to be recovered. I'm still a drink away from a drunk. I'm a cucumber that's been turned into a pickle, and there's no going back. And that's the fact. When I drink, I don't drink like other people. So a little bit about my background. My parents were a couple farm kids from Iowa and Nebraska. They were the first kids in their family to go to college. They met in college. They were married in August of 1965. I was born in January of 1966. I was sober before I figured the math out on that. I'll tell you this, my arrival radically changed their lives, and they weren't too thrilled about it. They were not prepared to be parents. They weren't very good at it. They did the best they could with what they had. They were alcoholics and drug addicts themselves. They ended up in the program, and I'll share that as I go along. But we moved a lot. I never felt like I fit in. I never felt... and my parents never said, "Oh, it's your fault, our lives suck." But I had that feeling, it still came across. I knew I was to blame. And why that was, I don't know. We moved a lot. It was the 60s and early 70s. We're out in Iowa and Wisconsin, where we moved a lot. But, my parents were trying to be free spirits and that type of stuff, and that's just what I was around. I was pretty happy as a kid. I just didn't feel okay with other kids. I never felt like I fit in. I just never felt right. And I was a new kid again in the neighborhood. I had a paper route. I always, I wasn't late. I don't think we were allowed to be lazy back then anyway. I'm not sure, but I had a paper route, and one of my customers gave me, and I don't. In full disclosure, I don't know if it was a 6-pack or a 12-pack, all right? 12-pack sounds better, but it was probably a 6-pack, right? But they gave me a one short. They had bought something, an alcoholic canned beverage that they didn't like, and they thought it'd be cool to give the preteen paper boy these 5 cans. So I got with another friend, and we drank those. And it immediately fixed everything. We went ice skating, and I tell you this, I don't remember much. I blacked out, but the next day I woke up not feeling good, kind of in a fog, and not knowing what had happened, but I was a hit. I was a hit. I fit in. People were telling stories about my behavior, and I was a part of. And there was a lot of older kids, so I was kind of melded with the older kids. I was kind of always big for my age anyway, and I stuttered, and I was quick to fight, I guess. So I could hold my own pretty much with the older kids. And so, but I belonged, you know. To this day, I believe that alcohol saved my life, because I think I would have been one of those troubled teens that committed suicide. I was just that screwed up. By the time I hit high school, I was a daily pot smoker and a weekend partier. I hung out with the cool kids. My nickname was the Duke, which sounds really, really cool, except when you know the truth, it was the Duke of Puke, because I threw up. I never said, I'm good, I don't want another. I never turned down a drink the whole time. I never said, I got school in the morning, I got to work in the morning, I got to drive, I got to go to work, whatever. I never said no. Something outside of me always stopped my drinking. And it usually, you know, like I said, I was a blackout, pass-out drinker. Usually threw up. And in Iowa, it freezes, all right? So you'd have these little monuments of, you know, last weekend, so it was kind of embarrassing. But I just played it off, you know, that party to your puke kind of attitude. You know, I barely got through high school. And it was weird because my last year, most of my friends were either graduated or I dropped out. And so it was kind of weird. My senior year was kind of weird, but I did okay. You know, I got through school. And, you know, I like to tell this story. So my parents, I was allowed to smoke and drink at the house because my parents were more comfortable with me doing it there instead of running the streets. So I really did both. I could, you know, do the house and run the streets. But one night on a Friday night, at school, this was in 10th grade, my teacher hands me a stack of papers and said, if you want to take the final, you need to turn this homework assignment in. And basically, it was pretty simple. It was just fill in the blank. It was history. I did good on the quizzes and the tests. I was going to get a C. I was going to have a strong C with doing no work at all. But now to take the final, which if I didn't take the final, I was going to fail. All right. So I had enough sense to give me the stack of papers. So I'm at home on a Friday night, and my parents are like, wow, you know, our son's home. So they went out and bought a bottle of slow gin and some 7-Up, and I did the homework. I turned this homework in with purple rings, and it reeked of slow gin. And no one said, hey, what's up with your homework? Why is it, you know, reek of alcohol and have all these circles in it? But it was crazy, you know. And my parents, they meant well. But so I survived high school, and I got this crazy idea, geographical cure, I was going to join the military. And so I joined the Air Force. And for the most part, I did pretty good there for a bit. I'm pretty brief about this. All the rank I ever had, I had twice. So I went up. And you know, I was able to get an honorable discharge and a VA benefits, and thank God for that. But I was a mess. And the one thing about in the military, when you drink, you have people that have your back. And I was always kind of a quick talker, and you never knew what drunk you were going to get with me. All right, we might go out to get rowdy, and I want to be mellow. All right, then the nights that we want to get, you know, just kind of chill, I want to fight. You know, you never knew where I was going to be, what trouble I was going to be getting into, but people always had my back, and that was good about the military. Because I could just let loose. And like I said, I was and sometimes when you're a blackout drinker and you don't remember what you do and people are okay with that behavior, then you got a blank check. So I had a blank check to do whatever I wanted because they already were accepting the fact that I was a blackout drinker. So, you know, I probably crossed some lines I probably shouldn't have crossed. And every time I got in trouble in the military, I said, I'm not going to drink. And I'd make it a couple days. I'd make it a couple days. And then the weekend would hit, and I couldn't take it. And people liked, I'll tell you this, one time, I was up for a promotion, and that got canceled. That was the beginning of the end, right? And I'm depressed, and I had big plans. I was going to stop drinking, going to stop smoking. I was going to start exercising. I was going to start reading, maybe go to school, maybe get involved. I had all, it got complicated really, really quick about me trying to fix me. And I remember that night, it was Friday night, and these guys, they presented me with a couple bottles of Jack Daniels and said, let's do it, I was cheap entertainment, and people liked me when I drank. So I get out of the military, and a friend of mine was in Abilene, Texas at Dyess Air Force Base, and we had been good friends. I was overseas when I got asked to leave the Air Force, but my friend, let me backtrack a little bit. So during this time when I'm over in Italy, my father gets sober. And I don't really hear a lot of good information. Basically, my brother says he's hanging out with a different group of freaks. And that was it. Not a good raging review of the alcoholics that he was hanging out with. He did send me a short piece of mail. Well, first of all, I had stopped talking to my parents, so I got in trouble by the military because my parents, and they had split up. They both contacted the military, asked why I wasn't communicating. That doesn't go well in the military. So I had forced contact with my dad, and he said that when I went to prison, he wouldn't be able to be much help, but he would send me cigarettes. And I wasn't in any legal trouble, all right? It was my dad's hope and prayer that I'd go to prison. Jail's institution or death. And so his prayer was that somehow somebody would snatch me up. And if life was fair, I'd be in prison. But that's another story. But so that was his hope for me, that I would end up. So I got out of the military and I'm bouncing around, and my dad is doing an internship up at Hazleton, and they got a bed for me and all this stuff, and I just wasn't there. And somehow, and this is 89, summer of 89, and somehow I get in touch with a friend of mine in Abilene, at Dyess Air Force Base, and he was a drinking buddy of mine. His wife had left him. Hard to imagine that. But he had a lease an apartment, and he said, hey, come on down to Texas. You can live here for free. And don't even worry about food. He was a cook, and so plenty of food there. Just come on down. Just, get away from all that. Come on down. And so I get there, and then I show up, and he's there with some old guy, and they're laying down the rules. Apparently, Wayne no longer drank, all right? And but Wayne was okay with me drinking, just no drugs in the house. No drugs, because he was still in the Air Force, didn't need, marijuana smell on his uniform and stuff. So fair enough. So that went pretty good until he went to work. And I found the people that drank like I drank and did things I did. I just immediately found them. And so I said, hey, come on up, So I had a little party in his apartment with his food and his stuff. And so here I am, and basically I get tossed out, but I got new friends. So I'm kind of couch surfing and stuff, hanging out with my new friends. And I was always getting new friends, but these friends weren't the same as my high school friends or my Air Force friends, because these friends, when you talk junk or whatever, no one had my back. I'd wake up in strange places with strange bruises. It was bad. I was kicked out of a lot of different bars and places like that. I wouldn't know. I'd show up. They would say, what are you doing here? And I'd like, what? What are you talking about? So I was getting thrown out of places and banned from places that most decent people wouldn't go. I was hanging out with criminals, and we were stealing, and I got introduced to rock cocaine or crack. It's so much cooler to say rock cocaine. But I was a full-blown crackhead thief, hanging out with these people. These people are telling me, of all people, that I'm just like them. They'd all been in rehab a couple times and during prison and stuff like that. They're telling me that I'm alcoholic and I'm a drug addict. And I'm like, you guys are losers, I'm 23 years old, I just got out of the military. I'm just partying. I'm just having a good time, But so I wound up at the back of a strip joint Thanksgiving weekend, and new friends, always making new friends, all right? And I'm would wake up, in the mid conversation, whatever. So we're talking about our next caper, and we're gonna rob this guy, and we're gonna need to take him out. And I'm in this conversation, and we're not taking him out for pizza or ice cream, And I kind of come to in the middle of this conversation, and there's, like I said, it's in the back of a strip joint. It's a crazy scene, but I'm like, what am I doing here? What am I doing here? I was a good kid, This ain't my people. This isn't what I'm doing. So that was the last time I did cocaine, and probably the last time I might have tried smoking some pot before then. But I decided Thanksgiving weekend that I was going to get clean. I was going to get clean. And that lasted a little bit, and then somehow December 1st, I ended up at an alcohol store there in Texas, a liquor store, and I was working at Target, hanging out with younger people, not Target, Kmart, stocking shelves at night, which I liked that job because you could do it wasted, and so it was pretty hassle-free. But somehow I ended up buying a bottle of Jack Daniels. I had no intentions. I already had a plan. I knew alcohol and drugs was the problem. And I had known it earlier. One time, when this colonel got promoted to general, and I was of age and underage. It's kind of complicated, but I was in the military at a time when they raised the drinking age. So it was 19, then went to 21, and all of a sudden I couldn't drink again. But this guy was getting his general. And he said, anyone can drink, listed free booze, free. But all these generals and officers were there. I didn't drink, all right, because I knew better. I knew when I took a drink, it was wide open. So I had to, and it was miserable because I was there with all those guys. They were hammering down, and I couldn't wait to get back to the barracks so I could drink. But I knew I had enough sense at that stage in my career that later on I didn't have that same mental thing. But I knew that I drank differently. I knew that when I took a drink, bad stuff happened. And lots of times I tried not to drink. Like I said, every time I got in trouble, I said, I'm not going to do it. And then I'd end up doing it. So here I got this bottle now. And my life is bad. I'm barely bathing. I am donating blood to buy stale bread to eat. And we're stealing, and it's just life's a mess. And so I'm at a pretty good bottom, but I end up buying this bottle. So I say, okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to sit on this bottle till New Year's Eve. All right? If I cannot drink this bottle New Year's Eve, then I'll prove I'm not an alcoholic, and I'll drink this bottle New Year's Eve and celebrate. All right? And then if I do drink this bottle, then New Year's Eve or New Year's Day, I'll go to treatment. I'll go get help. Well, my sobriety date is December 4th. So my 30-day plan lasted about 3.5 days. And I do not remember opening that bottle or taking the cap off. I was a toss the cap kind of guy. So I have no idea what inspired that drink. I know that I wasn't doing crack anymore, so I was coming off the alcohol and didn't really have anything to come off of it with. I was probably coming off the cocaine a little bit too. I'm not sure. It was a mess. I was seeing things, hearing things. I didn't know if it was night or day. I was shaking. Was reached out for help, and on one of the phone conversations, someone came up to me and I threatened to kill them, and that is against the law. And so quickly, I was on some type of crisis line or something. I don't know. I was just, these guys, and see, some of these guys I was partying with, they were trying to get me to come to AA. And they'd come back with lots of ones, all right? So you can figure that out. But I remember one day they brought this woman back from AA, and she had a red chip. And we were sitting around partying, and all of a sudden she has this crazy breakdown because she relapsed. She had just picked up a chip, and then she went with these guys, and they relapsed. I had no clue what that was about, but I said, get that out of here. It was crazy. But I saw someone in a relapse, and I saw that kind of breakdown. And so I was having this crazy, crazy breakdown, and I really didn't know what was up. And I ended up, like I said, they made this threat. They came out to get me. I was locked up taken to a mental hospital for 72 hours. They were pretty sure I was schizophrenic. And you know, I was acting pretty crazy. I didn't really know my name, which is complicated because I was raised by my middle name. And then when I was in the military, I started going by my first name. And it just was, I couldn't tell if it was night or day. Billboards are talking to me. It was a psychotic episode. It was bad. And so I ended up in this hospital. They shoot me up with Haldol. And I don't even know if they do Haldol anymore. But they thought I was schizophrenic, and that made perfect sense to my mom. My mom's still drinking at this time. So, that explains everything. So it must be schizophrenic. And it made sense to me, I guess, I don't know, but I was like a zombie stuck in my body. And eventually I was able to, my mom had moved to Topeka, Kansas, and they let me leave the hospital with 30 days of medication. I stayed there for like 40 days. But they let me leave, and I took Greyhound bus up to Kansas, but I wasn't really released. They just gave me 30 days worth of medication and said that if I do not return, they'll put a AMA, there'd be a warrant for my arrest if they found me somewhere in Texas after that weekend. But they gave me 30 days worth of medication, but I had a weekend pass to get out of the state. So I ended up in Topeka, Kansas at the VA hospital, and they saved my life. You know, I was, at first they weren't sure what was going on. They slowly got me off of the Haldol and got me kind of cleared up, and I was able to go through drug and alcohol treatment at the VA in Topeka, Kansas. And I met this guy named Dave in the music room. Now, I'm 24 by now, and everyone is old. All right? I don't know if you've been to the VA, but everyone's old, and a lot of Vietnam vets, and a lot of them have been there before. I think everyone had been there before. But Dave was like 10 years, he's the closest guy to me, was like 10 years older. So I'm sitting there talking to Dave, and he'd been through a couple times. He said, when I went to meetings, I didn't drink. When I stopped going to meetings, I started drinking again. This time I'm going to meetings. And then really everyone in the place was saying that. Now, I wasn't an alcoholic, all right? I mean, I wasn't. I was too young, way too smart, and I hadn't done those things. I never had a DUI. I'll tell you a secret about DUI. You have to have a car to get one. For the most part. You know? Never been through a divorce, you know. Little secret about divorce, you have to have a wife, get divorced. A long-term relationship with me was like maybe 3 weeks. Maybe I had something longer than that. You know, here's the thing. If you liked me, then you had problems. I was good at chasing, but once I caught you, then I just lost all respect for you, because why would you like me? You know, I was a mess, you know. So, yeah, I wasn't good at any of that stuff. I didn't lose a career. I sort of lost an Air Force thing, but that didn't really count. That's, you know. So I compared myself out, and I just wasn't. But I tried the 30-day plan before and failed at it. So now, and everyone's saying I'm an alcoholic and a drug addict and all this stuff, and I'm like, well, I tried 30 days. I'm going to do a year. I'm going to stay off of drugs and alcohol. Maybe not marijuana, but we'll you know, but I'm going to do it for a year, all right? So these are some nice people. We were going to meetings outside. You know, people would come in and bring AA and NA. We would come there. And we'd go take the bus and stuff and go to dances. And everyone seemed nice, you know. I hadn't been around nice people in a long, long time, you know. And they said, keep coming back. And so I figured, you know, I don't know anyone here in Topeka, Kansas. I might as well just hang out with these people and do my 1-year plan. Get some clothes. I lost all my clothes. I don't know. When you're couch surfing, you lose your stuff, you know. So, I mean, I had thrift store underwear and socks. That's kind of crazy. So I'm like, you know, I'm going to get some clothes, get a car, maybe find a woman, maybe just get my stuff together. Then I'll, after a year, I should be able to drink, just drink a little bit here and there. It makes perfect sense. So I got engulfed in the fellowship of AA, and I loved the fellowship of AA. I'd come early, hang out late. I hated the hour in between. Man, I hated it. People would open the book and read something out of it, or they'd say, I want to thank my higher power, who I choose to call God. I'd roll my eyes back and say, here we go. I hated it. I couldn't wait till we go out for coffee or go out to eat, do something fun, But I just had to hear these people say the same old stuff all the time. And I kept coming back. Really, I had nowhere else to go. I moved in with a couple people that I went to treatment with, who everyone thought that was crazy, but we had a good time. And one of those guys is still sober, and the other guy was Dave, who I met in the music room. He's been in and out, but he's still alive. And we had some good times. We had a meeting at our house. We had cookouts and the fellowship. Somehow I got a year, and back there, the miracle year. The miracle happens. Don't quit before the miracle. So I have a year, and I hadn't really gotten involved with anybody. I wasn't really getting involved physically with anybody at the end of my drinking anyway. So they had suggested 1 year of celibacy, and there really wasn't that hard of a stretch, really. But now my year was up. And so I was free game. And I started feeling. And for the most part, I was a teenage boy in a man's body. I'd never grown emotionally. And I'm hanging out with the fellowship and doing stuff, but we're acting just like kids. I'm not real responsible. I live with 3 other guys, just chip in on some bills, eat, spend whatever I wanted to spend. I mean, I hadn't grown up at all, but I hadn't really felt either. Now I'm starting to feel feelings. That whole 1 year thing, a miracle 1 year, well, I'll tell you this, it was bad. I felt, they said, oh, you're going to feel better. Well, what they meant was you're going to feel things better. Not that you're going to feel good, but you're going to start feeling. And so I started feeling. And I didn't know how to process that. And over the year or so, old-timers would assign me sponsors. And I had a bunch of sponsors. I had a lot of, I'd say something crazy in a meeting. I loved quoting Dr. Alcoholic Addict because I could say alcoholic addict. And it just pissed the old-timers off. And I loved that. I loved it. I loved seeing people get uncomfortable. I could quote that story. And I just liked reading. I just liked 449, Dr. Alcoholic Addict, and ramble, parrot some stuff. I didn't have a clue what I was even saying. And I would share some crazy stuff. And then after the meeting, some old timer would say, who's your sponsor? And I'd say, and they'd say, oh, here you go. You're going to work with this guy, I wouldn't call that guy, And sometimes we'd be out for coffee and someone would get me cornered up and say, we're going to start down the steps or whatever. I wasn't into it. But now I'm starting to feel I'm hurting. So I go to a meeting, and I forgot the guy's name. But a good friend of mine. So I'm at a meeting, I'm hurting. I'm doing some behavior that I'm not real proud of, and stuff's coming to a head, and I'm feeling for the first time in a long time, and I need a sponsor. I'm at this point where it's either to drink or to embrace the program and find a spiritual solution and the big book talks about not always easy alternatives, all right? And it was a struggle because, I knew I couldn't drink again, but I really didn't understand what you guys had. But there was this guy named Steve, and Steve played guitar. Steve was cool. The ladies liked Steve, Steve had a good-looking girlfriend, but there was always women just kind of sniffing around him. Steve had lost his job and was happy about it. And he lost his job, it was on TV bad, all right? It was a big deal. Everyone was pissed off that Steve lost his job. Steve was as happy as could be. He said, it'll work out. God will provide. And the book talks about matching calamity with serenity. And that's Steve was like that. So I'm at a meeting. I'm sitting with my friend. Man, I cannot remember his name. I'm going to remember about 3 a.m. But I said, hey, man, I need a sponsor. I'm going to go ask Steve. He said, oh, no, don't get Steve. He'll make you work the steps. Right? So that was the people I hung out with. Right? And there was we were happy. We weren't happy. But we had fellowship. We'd like to hang out and talk about each other. If you weren't there, you were going to get talked about. So it'd probably be best interest to be there. And so, but Steve took me through this book, page by page. Steve was a recovered alcoholic. Steve used his full name, explained why he did that. And he took me through the book, and we said a prayer, did the third step prayer. And I'd done prayers in the past. I had done, when you're out roaming the streets, sometimes church groups will want to feed you, but you got to say a little prayer to eat, and I had been brought up around church, but I hadn't really done a real prayer. And at Steve's place, I got on my knees, and we said the third step prayer, and something changed. I felt it, and I immediately launched into the fourth step. Prior to this, if you asked me what step I was on, I would tell you I'm working the first 3 steps on a daily basis. Now that's insane. There's no, but I had heard people say about they're working the last 3 steps on a daily basis. So I just spun it around and said I'm working the first 3 steps on a daily basis. But the only way to work step 3 is to start. The only way to complete step 3 is to start step 4. It's pretty simple. And so Steve took me through, and he had me start writing down names. He took me through the steps, and I did my 5th step with him. And he let me have that little moment there while he was doing stuff. And Steve had this desk, and you'd sit at the desk, and all the sponsees, we swore he cut the legs off of the chair because you couldn't sit there but look at Steve, He'd be reading the book, and he'd point out something, and a light would just go off. And Steve carried the message, and Steve was a busy guy, and he took the time out to spend time with me. If I needed to call him, he was there. We go through the book. He gave me, I missed this part. He gave me simple instructions when I first asked him to be my sponsor. He said, get up by a dictionary. But this book was written in the 30s, and it was outdated then. There's going to be words that I didn't understand. I needed to look them up. So I ran out and bought me a little dictionary. This is before the internet. And to look up words I didn't understand. So we're there reading. The first day we're getting together, and come across the word avocation. And I was like sort of like, so he said, what's that mean? Because our work with other alcoholics is our avocation. And I know what vocation is, I'm pretty good at, I've slid through life most of my life not knowing really what was up, and I could get away with things pretty good. So it's just like a job. Well, it's the exact opposite. It's nothing like a job. It's without pay. It's as a hobby. But Steve pointed out that I was told that there's going to be words in here I didn't understand, to buy a book to look up those words because I wasn't going to know what they meant. And in the privacy of my own home with no one else around, my pride would not let me look up a word that I didn't know. And luckily that was early on, because that's the type of person I was. I didn't read directions. Right? You'd be amazed how much better like macaroni and cheese tastes when you follow the directions on the bottom. Not that complicated. But I was not a directions person. I wasn't an ask for help person. It was hard enough to ask Steve to help me. And I had to learn that I did not know everything. And I really thought I did. I don't know why I would think that, But I had this ego. And, and I heard this described. I was an egomaniac with a low self-esteem. And I was such a mess. And I was too prideful to look up words. I was too prideful to ask for help. And, so he took me through the steps. And I remember after my 5th step with him, we did step 7, and then he gave me instructions: take this paperwork home, go home, split it in these categories, and it was 9:20. Well, the 8 o'clock meeting, they're all at Mama's Cafe there in near Washburn in Topeka, Kansas. That's where they went for coffee. So I ran. And also let me explain this. When I did the 7-step prayer, the 3rd step had a little bit of effect. The 7th step was like a whole new drug, and that's the only way I can describe it. It felt like a different drug. I was on fire. I was at a high that I had never been on. I had just done a very thorough, good 5th step, and I was on fire. So I go there with my friends, all right, and I'm on fire. Well, none of them knew what the heck was wrong with me because none of them had done any of this, you know. And I hung out there for about a half hour, and I realized that they hadn't done what I had done. And I needed to follow my sponsor's instructions and go write those names in those categories. And then my sponsor helped me. He said, do not make any amends without talking to me first. And we went through the amends and the process and what I was going to say and how I was going to say it. He helped me write any type of, I stutter, so mail. So any mail I was going to send out, he went over that with me. There's certain words I struggle. So it was good. Steve took me through the steps and took me through the program. And then I've been honored enough to be asked to take other people through the steps. And that's a whole new thing, you know, and that's been fantastic. You know, I've been, I don't want to get too much, but as far as things are like now, life is good. I've been through some changes. I first came to this group last August or July, I think. I stumbled in here. I'd been here years ago. I think it might have been the other church. I'm not sure, but was going through a separation. I was staying at a friend's place here in Southern Pines until I was able to return back to my house after she cleared the stuff out of hers. But I like traveling. You know, the recovery has enabled me to fulfill a dream. That's to have a Harley Davidson. You know what I'm saying? Because I could never have that when I was out there. When I was a young man in the Air Force, I was going to buy one. I couldn't afford one. That wasn't going to happen. You know, and I like riding to meetings. I like the fellowship. But I also like the miracle of what happens when one alcoholic helps another. And that's the core of this thing. The meetings are great, and the fellowship is great, but the real part of this program, in my opinion, is when one alcoholic talks to another one and shares what they have. And I meant to read this, and I don't know where to even put it in the story, but something that I learned recently, and it's not as recent as it used to be, but I struggled in this program at first because I was comparing myself out, all right? And when I came to the rooms, everyone seemed successful and happy. You guys did not look like the alcoholics I hung out with. And it was important for people to share their drunkalogs. If you read the stories in here, there's a lot of drunkalog, all right? Once I started hearing people share their story, and I got to hear about their drinking and then how they were now. And I like this was called Step 0 to me, and we read it every day, but it says, if you have decided you want what we have and are willing to go to any length to get it, then you're ready to take certain steps. Until I knew what you guys had, I wasn't ready, you know, and I regret, you know, it took me a year and a half or so before I really started step work, and I'm lucky I survived that. But if someone would have forced this program down my throat, I would have been gone, you know. And I was lucky enough to keep coming back. And so if I have anything that I'd like to share is just to anyone new, and the miracle hasn't happened for you, and you don't feel you're recovered, is just to keep coming back, and the miracle will happen. Thanks. I'll keep coming back.